Good morning, Technosphere. And it's not morning. And I have had a really super spastic morning. I forgot that I was giving up smoking and I was onto the second spliff before I remembered. I spent a significant amount of money on things that I was going to use to not smoke. And then I talked a lot of shit. And then I decided to fuck everything off and get in the bath. But I can't help thinking continuously about the fucked up situation in which we find ourselves nationally and globally. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? Everything's fucked. And I remembered that the only war was class war, and it made me think, how many Labour governments have we had in the past 100 years? And then I thought, when did the Labour Party even start? And then I thought, well, what was there before the Labour Party? And then I thought, I really need to find out this shit. So I Googled it, as you do. And we have got what is called a bicameral parliamentary system. That does not mean it's got two cameras. It means it's got two houses. It means it's got the House of Commons and the House of Lords. So then I thought, well, when did that malarkey all start? So Google says on history.com that our parliamentary system can be traced back to Anglo-Saxon councils of clergymen and bishops, land-owning people and church people. They were appointed by the king to discuss shit. And they were called the Witan. And after they'd been meeting for a few, possibly 100 years, I don't know the dates, they became what's known as the Great Council. And in parallel to them, there were lesser persons appointed by them, I assume, to, hello Marina, to represent the areas in which they lived. And they were chosen by the landowners to meet locally. And they did that, and those were called moots. So you had the Great Council with all the poshies and the church people discussing taxes and government shit, and the local moots of people that were selected to represent their local areas, selected by the poshies, not by the local people. And they were called moots, and these two systems went along for a little while, and are the roots of the system we've got today. Now, you may take note of the fact that in this early system, the ordinary people, who are most people in the country, were not being represented by anybody, and their needs, wants, desires, etc., was not in it. Yeah, the early roots of Parliament were not about giving the people a voice. The people did not have a voice. The king was appointed by divine right. He chose the people who owned the land. And remember, they really didn't actually own it, they're only holding it for him. And they became the Great Council, and they chose what were called commoners, but were not actually common, because they would be like knights and upper middle classes, let's say, to represent the areas of land in which they lived. The people who lived there were considered to be the property of the landowners and the king, because the king was in charge by divine right. So that's the roots of our system. And you can see traces of that inequity, more than traces of that inequity, in the fact that when the Commons make a law nowadays, it has to be passed by the Lords. Anyway, there endeth today's lesson. It's not a happy story, and I don't expect it to have a happy ending, but we know it doesn't have a happy ending, do we? We know it ends with Trump in the White House and Norris in Downing Street, so it definitely doesn't have a happy ending, so don't get your hopes up. I do anticipate a few highlights. For example, the first Labour government of 1924 and the beginning of the NHS. But aside from that, it's not a happy tale. But tomorrow I will carry on and talk about how the Witten and the Moots evolved into the early Parliament. I know, you're so excited, aren't you? Try not to get moist.